Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire.
What does asbestos management mean to you?
I used to really struggle with the asbestos management at my site, but now it's a breeze.
It used to be really expensive. I was paying loads, but now I've got my asbestos power team in place. It's so much easier.
Asbestos can be a pain in the arse if not handled right.
We had to stop the job because asbestos was discovered. Now we don't have that problem.
Asbestos management is easier than you think. Asbestos management. Be proactive, not reactive. Think about asbestos first, not last.
And now your hosts, best-selling authors and asbestos experts, Ian Stone and Neil Munro.
Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire. I'm Ian Stone.
I'm Neil Munro.
So today we're talking about the hidden killer and how it's even more invisible than ever.
Yeah, what do we mean by that? Well, it's been, UCATA have released some figures.
Shocking figures.
Yeah, basically on the uptake of training over the pandemic during COVID sort of times, the full lockdown, even up to sort of this time period where, you know, we're kind of looking at localised lockdowns and stuff and restrictions in place. Just for those that don't know, UCATA is an asbestos training association that accredits or certifies members and their training courses, that they meet the criteria and levels required by the regulations for asbestos training. And they have various members, and those members provide training, and to certify their courses, they generate certificates for those courses through the UCATA certificate generator.
Yeah, they basically audit to say that you meet the requirements of delivering a course and that your trainers are decent at delivering the courses, and it's kind of levels the playing field and makes sure everybody is covering everything they should do as a minimum.
Yeah. So the certificate generator, I'm presuming that this is where they kind of got their figures, because when somebody passes, their certificate's generated through the UCATA system. So they've got a good idea of how many numbers on a monthly basis are going through. And they released some figures just recently about the uptake of asbestos training across their, you know, the plethora of training courses. And, you know, shockingly to believe, there's a massive, massive downturn in training.
Yeah, so prior to the coronavirus epidemic, there was on average 18,000 workers a month they completed the asbestos training. But over the last 6 months, between, March and August 2020, an average of 6,000 workers a month completed asbestos training, which that's a 66% drop in workers actually undertaking asbestos training.
Yeah, it's a massive figure, isn't it?
It is. It's huge. And there are implications of why that is an issue. I mean, I understand why there's been the drop. Downturn has happened across the board, across construction, across all sectors really, and therefore perhaps some of those workers are no longer employed. There's been a downturn in particular types of work, so work hasn't continued to happen at the same pace. So again, the requirement for asbestos training has dropped. However, I don't believe it's dropped in the same respect as that percentage drop. I believe everybody is kind of, rightly so, thought about coronavirus and brought that to the forefront, because that is what is really being looked at by health and safety consultants, health and safety executive, EHO. There's COVID teams out and about in offices, shops doing inspections, which rightly so, yeah, COVID needs to be sorted. But I believe that has come at the detriment of asbestos training. And that's kind of been put on the back burner as a secondary issue, really.
Yeah, I think there's probably a number of reasons why, as you quite rightly said, is I think when the pandemic was at its height, obviously there couldn't be any face-to-face training, and obviously businesses and training providers had to adapt to go online. That probably made it difficult to the market to actually get courses. I definitely think priorities have kind of taken over. COVID, yeah, maybe an indicator of priority over asbestos training, but it's probably more down to costs. Again, this is an additional cost into people's, you know, as a business, as an employer, it's an additional cost to send every people on these asbestos courses. You have to take time out of the business to actually go and do the course. And when we're in, a recession and if a business, there is a downturn, it's kind of all hands to the pump. And, you want all your guys, your operatives, essentially we're talking about construction workers here. You want all odds out making money.
Yeah, all hands on deck, cracking on, trying to claw your way through.
Trying to survive.
Yeah, exactly.
Trying to survive, you try and keep your business afloat, which, okay, that I appreciate and understand as a business owner, but
it does have a detrimental effect.
We're now not talking about somebody not having, I don't know, the right uniform or not having the right laptop, computer, phone. We're talking about information that's potentially going to keep them from harm and developing an asbestos-related disease. And having that information, asbestos awareness, is so important to one, it's make sure it's up to date, and to two, to try and just drum it home to people about working safely on sites.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, out of the figures, we don't know what percentage of 18,000 a month equates to.
Are still working.
Well, no, what I was going to say was the 18,000 who are new and first timers in having asbestos awareness training.
Yeah.
Which I think a large proportion will be new. And if that's dropped off the face, then that's kind of even more disconcerting.
Yeah,
if
no one's never had that, and ever had the training.
If somebody's had it, I don't know, the last couple of years, they have a bit of a knowledge bank around asbestos and the issues. However, from doing the courses that we've put on and speaking to the people that come and sit our courses, they even say themselves that 12-month period is a long old period. So even if somebody has got the knowledge prior, that 12-month drop-off point as such is a long old time, and people forget things.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll come to work on a Monday and I can't remember what I did last week.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's why the regulations are in place to ensure that this type of training is regularly updated and refreshed. Like, it doesn't mean that you have to do a course every year, but the general stuff needs to be updated and reminded, because, as you quite rightly said, a year between courses is a long time. And when you're not working within that specific ream, you do forget stuff. And it's really important, especially for, emergency situations. They should be updated as a minimum every year, I believe. But obviously, any sort of requirements for the training should be taken under a training needs analysis. So identifying what gaps or shortfalls in the actual syllabus for that individual person. And that sort of forms the refresher training as such.
So essentially what that means for me is we've got this big pool of people that either are now in the workplace without training, asbestos awareness training or anything whatsoever undertaken, and you've also got a pool of people that are overdue on their training. And essentially both of those create the same consequence further down the line. If it's not in the forethought of people's minds of dealing with asbestos or coming across asbestos within their day-to-day jobs, then we are going to see an incident increase of things being disturbed. Perhaps if people had the training, they would stop when they see something untoward. Whereas now we're heading into that territory of, if people forget, there's going to be incidents, and they're going to be larger incidents because people are going to crack on, plow on through stuff and not perhaps stop when they see something untoward because they've forgotten about it. And further down the line, this is going to possibly have a spike within disease, mesothelioma cases, things like that in the future, and other asbestos-related diseases.
Yeah, and these figures, obviously, UCATA covers all aspects of asbestos training. We've kind of only sort of touched on the awareness element, but within these figures, we'll probably include training for non-licensed operatives and training for licensed operatives. Now, the license, really, I don't believe that there'll be that many in there because they can't afford not to have training because it's all part of their license and that's checked on a regular basis. However, when you slip into the non-licensed, there's probably areas where these operatives are still cracking on with non-licensed jobs without a date certificates.
Exactly. I mean, that's a very good point. The difference between licensed work and non-licensed work is phenomenal in the actual standards. And ultimately, the same kind of things need to be in place. Risk assessments, planner works, insurances, medicals, face fits, all the right equipment, stuff that's PAT tested, stuff that's DOP tested, etc. However, in reality, it's a huge gap in between
the two
Yeah.
standards.
And I mean, essentially, the non-licensed stuff that does go undetected, under the radar. There's no 14-day notice period to the HSE. The HSE aren't actively looking and inspecting those people because they don't have a license.
Yeah.
The license holders, every time they put a 14-day notification in, they're waving a flag to the HSE saying, we're going to do a job, come and have a look at me. You know where I'm going to be working, you know where I'm going to be at. Whereas on the non-licensed stuff, that's not happening. Yeah. Yes, there's a notification that needs to be put in before work starts. However, it's not being looked at and monitored in the same way as licensed work is. To my knowledge, the non-licensed stuff that's going on, there's no kind of HC department sitting there looking and reviewing these notifications that come in and sitting there like they do with the licensed stuff saying, do you know what, I'm going to go and check this job out.
Yeah.
Or these guys are up for a license renewal. Yeah, we need to do a couple of visits on them, and they get flagged up. On the non-licensed stuff, that doesn't happen. It's just people out there in the world working on asbestos that should have everything in place.
Yeah.
And go on.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say that kind of stems from the EU directive change, wasn't it? The HC were never really fully on board with.
No.
And they added additional criteria to the non-licensed. And as Ian said, made the slightly higher risk non-licensed jobs notifiable.
Yeah.
However, HC said we're never going to look at these.
Yeah.
It's just literally going into
it's a box tick exercise.
It's a box ticking, exactly. That's the correct terminology. Which they've never kind of moved away from that or kind of used that information, as far as I'm aware, to kind of make the industry better.
No, I mean, that's it. I mean, I do know that each year the HC do over certain periods and certain months, they'll say, right, we're not happy with, I don't know, is construction design management being followed?
Yeah, they have a focus.
That's it. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
And they'll focus on one core kind of element of something. So it could be CDM on new build construction sites, or it could be demolition works that fall under F10. And it's those kind of things. And each year they pick a focus point and go after it. Whereas that's never cropped up as non-licensed, has never been a focus point.
As an issue. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. They have focused on construction sites, with, respiratory problems, so including asbestos, looking at issues around that. And they'll kind of look at stuff relating to asbestos.
But it's only if it appears on that project.
Again, yeah, it's not like Ian said, if a core focus on that particular element of work criteria.
Mm. And that is a concern, like we say, going forwards. If all these people...
Yeah, these are non-trained or out-of-date trained, we should say, maybe people cracking on with non-licensed stuff.
And the thing is with the non-licensed stuff, again, this is a big gulfing difference between the two types of characters that carry this out. The licensed asbestos removal contractors are doing this day in and day out, and they should be on point with it because that's their livelihood.
Yeah.
Whereas when you look at the non-licensed stuff, a lot of the times companies will have a couple of guys trained in non-license for when they come across it on a particular project. So, for instance, roofing companies are a prime example.
Yeah.
They'll have a small team of people that they train up for one particular job because they go to do a roof and that roof is asbestos.
Yeah.
So they will then work on that roof and deal with it all appropriately, and that's it. However, a lot of their work, probably 95% or more, never is asbestos. It's all about re-roofing modern materials that are not asbestos. So they're just cracking on in their own world of roofing, and that's it. And then this once in a blue moon, an asbestos project crops up, they'll either get the guys retrained because the likelihood is it's over 12 months since they've last worked on that project. So then when they're in and they're on point, that's great, but now they're missing that out.
I think you've painted a very positive picture of those industries, if I'm honest, because I was just sitting there thinking, how many roofing companies do we work for that call us out to sample verge undercloaks?
Yeah, it's true. Very, very.
It's like, how many of those
few.
are replaced every day and tested? And soffits and fascias.
That's a massive point, right? Because I was thinking on the commercial side.
Just went off on a tangent.
Yeah, but it's true.
When you were saying that, I was like, yeah, that's the ultimate ideal situation. But in reality, I wonder how that is happening in every company.
And that's the thing. On a commercial side, it's kind of more obvious, those things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas on the domestic side, people having their windows replaced and their guttering replaced, their soffits replaced, like you say, how many people are just cracking on? And even if they had training before, well, now they've definitely not had the training done because the 66% drop in training overall.
Yeah.
It's kind of a little bit Wild West turning back into if people aren't up to date and up to speed.
Yeah. We've got, prior to COVID, there was an issue with people not getting the right information, still accidents happen every day, people not being trained. And to see this 66% drop off is a worrying stat. It's a worrying, because what effect will that have on future exposures?
Yeah.
Future people being exposed to asbestos because of that 66% drop off.
Yeah, and that's what we titled this podcast, The Hidden Killer, Even More Invisible Than Ever, because we already know it's hidden. And now, over the last kind of 6 months, it has become more invisible than ever, which is a big concern. And I don't know, it's going to take a good while until we get back to seeing the right training for everybody and that training being checked and all the rest of it. It's going to be a long cycle. And in this period, who knows?
It is a strange period. It's kind of like COVID-19 has taken a priority, rightfully so, to keep people safe. But it's kind of like
detriment of what effect?
It's like the hospitals.
Yeah.
Okay. The hospital shut down for COVID and everything else kind of took a back bench.
Yeah.
Cancer treatment, heart treatments,
Even your dentist won't see you because of just having a normal checkup.
Yeah.
Unless it's emergency, they're not bothering.
And it's kind of now we're coming, well, hopefully, touch wood, we're getting lighter restrictions at this current time. We need to now go back and make sure that we're doing all the stuff that was put in place before, which was important.
We need to catch up.
We need to get all that stuff done.
Yeah, we do. And from our point of view, like saying that training is massive. There will be an upsurge in it, possibly, or it might not. It might just be a little trickle until it builds back up to normal figures.
Yeah.
And I mean, the quicker that we get back up to normal figures, the quicker that people are checking anybody working on their site has got up-to-date training, up-to-date awareness to be in and around possible asbestos, then the better, because that is what ultimately will be saving people in the future. It will save people from exposure. It's going to save people from having the headache of projects go wrong. It's going to save people the cost of when projects go wrong, because as we all know, when asbestos goes wrong, it goes wrong in a big way, and it always costs a lot of money and a lot of time. And ultimately, right now, during any project, time and money is not something that any business can wear, because we've already wore everything around COVID. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, this is kind of more important than ever. If you want a project and you have something go pear-shaped and it costs time and money, that could be the business gone. And all down to a poxy bit of training that takes half a day.
Yeah, trying to save a buck.
Save a buck, cut corners, which isn't good enough. And that's what we wanted to kind of really raise that and highlight, that it's not just about saving a little bit of money and a little bit of time. It could have bigger implications across the board.
Yeah.
Money, health, death, everything.
Yeah. A killer, essentially.
Yeah.
A killer to the person, a killer to the company, a killer to the economy.
Yeah.
All has a knock-on effect.
Great. So I think we've covered everything we wanted to today. Remember, asbestos first, not last.